Okay. All right, we're good to go. Okay, folks, we are good to go. The time is 10:02, and I will call the February 9, 2023 Planning Board meeting to order. We are joined by Vice Chair Bailey and Commissioner Washington.
Morning.
And Commissioner Dorner. And we do not have Commissioner Giraldo. I think we're supposed to have Commissioner Giraldo.
I think so.
Well, let's continue, and let's assume that Commissioner Giraldo will be joining us in a few minutes. I'm Chair Shapiro. Please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration for all submission of materials and exhibits was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with the link provided in the email provided by the planning board office, or listen by phone by utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. And of course, anyone may tune in to watch the planning board meeting via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, you may use our online web form, and you'll see that referenced on the screen, or you saw that reference on the screen before us. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our Deputy Planning Director, Derek Erlage. We also have our Principal Counsel, David Warner, and Jessica Jones, our Planning Board Administrator, is with us in the room, as is Joe Parsons, our Senior Technical Hearing Writer. James Hunt is on the line, Division Chief with the Development Review Division. And we have staff member Don Townsend and Brian Cron, who are going to be helping us with our technical issues behind the scenes. So let's move on. First order of business is item 2. Look for a motion to approve the draft minutes of the February 2nd, 2022 planning board meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve draft minutes.
Second.
We've got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey. We've got a second by our newest arrival, Commissioner Giraldo. Good to see you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late.
I'm sorry, you're right in time for the second. It worked out fine. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Next, we're going to go to item 3C on our agenda. This is a Parks and Rec item. And I believe we have a presentation related to this. Mr. Carter, will you be taking the lead on this?
I will not, but good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and Planning Board members. Mr. Paul Sun will walk us through this presentation.
Mr. Paul Sun will walk us through the presentation, and Mr. Carter is the acting, while Mr. Tyler is away for a week. Mr. Carter is the acting director of Parks and Recreation. Good to see you, and good to see you in that temporary role. And we're also joined by Mr. McNeil, who's one of the other deputy directors.
Thank you.
And Mr. Sun, take it away.
Good morning, Chairman Shapiro and fellow planning board members. For the record, my name is Paul Sun, Land Acquisition Specialist, Department of Parks and Recreation. First item is the addition to Piscataway Creek Stream Valley Park. We presented this item to you in closed session on January 19th. And just a very brief recap. Next slide, if you can. The property is generally in the northern Brandywine area, approximately 1/2 mile west of Branch Avenue, Maryland Route 5. The property was previously, next slide, please. The property was previously identified on FY 2023-24 land acquisition priorities and is a low needs area for parkland, scored a ranking score of 55 points. Next slide, if you can. Property is contiguous to Piscataway Creek Stream Valley Park, which is to the north. Property is approximately 9.9 acres and 70% wooded. In April of 2022, we completed 2 independent appraisals on the property, and the owner has executed a purchase agreement to sell their property to the commission at the average of the 2 appraisals. So next slide, please. So in summary, DPR staff recommends to the planning board the approval of this purchase contract, and if agreeable, authorize a resolution for the executive director to execute any necessary settlement documents. Are there any questions?
Questions, commissioners?
No questions.
Anything else to bring to us on this? Or this is an action item, so if there's nothing else, and if there's no other questions, then I'd look for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendation or adopt the recommendation of staff and approve resolution PGC PB 2023-10.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Did I?
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you. And we next item, another Parks and Rec item. We have this is item 3D on our agenda. And I assume, Mr. Sun, you're taking this one as well?
Yes, Chairman. Again, this is a acquisition for Cheverly Town Park. And we presented this item at closed session on January 19th. And as a brief recap, this property is in the town of Cheverly. It continues with the city's park at Forest Road and located generally on the northwest side of John Hanson Highway, Maryland Route 50. The property is previously, again, this property, next slide, please. I'm sorry. You can move down just a little bit. Yes. This property was on the 22-23 acquisition list, and it's a high needs area for parkland. The ranking score is 66. Next slide. The property is currently owned by the Maryland State Highway Administration. It consists of 2 acres of woodlands. The Maryland Department of Transportation notified DPR this property would be surplus and available for purchase. Next slide. Oh, sorry. In November 2022, the Maryland Board of Public Works approved this transfer of the property to the commission. DPR staff, along with independent appraisals, have reviewed the Maryland State Highway's opinion of value and concur with the proposed asking price. In summary, DPR staff recommends that the planning board approve this purchase agreement and, if agreeable, adopt a resolution for the settlement of this property. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Sun. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, Commissioner Giraldo, this is a potential dog park. Would you like to make the motion? You can pass it.
Move approved.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve staff recommendation. This is PGCPB number 2023-11. The motion is by Commissioner Giraldo. The second is by Vice Chair Bailey. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. And our final Parks and Rec item is item 3E on our agenda. And Mr. Sun, this is you as well.
Yes, Chairman. This is a land disposal request at our Oak Crest Community Center. Next slide, please.
Give us 1 second, Mr. Sun, for some technical adjustments we're making. This will just take about 30 seconds, folks. We're good? Okay, good to go. Take it away, Mr. Sun.
Thank you, Chairman. So for those of you unfamiliar, this is our Oak Crest Community Center. Department of Parks and Recreation operates the Oak Crest Community Center, which is co-located with the William Hall Academy and located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Capitol Heights Boulevard and Marlboro Pike. Next slide, please. Let's go down to the next, one more slide, please. Thank you. Prince George's County Department of Public Works and Transportation has an active capital improvements project to improve portions of Marlboro Pike from Southern Avenue to Brooks Drive, which includes the frontage along our community center. The proposed roadway improvements will provide enhancement of pedestrian safety from Marlboro Pike from its intersections to Southern Avenue to Brooks Drive, which has a high history of pedestrian-related crashes. Additional community improvements include landscape medians, upgraded traffic signals, upgraded street lighting, resurfacing and drainage improvements along the project area. So as part of these associated improvements, there's a need to install a bioretention facility along Old Marlboro Pike in front of our community center. DPR staff recommends the approval of DPW&T's request for conveyance of 0.39 acres by using a credit towards the Prince George's County Land Bank. So, next slide. This is a depiction of where the bioretention facility will be installed. The conveyance of this property will ensure the future maintenance of this proposed stormwater management facility that is proposed to be constructed on park property. Next slide. One more, please. The conveyance of this land bank is Prince George's County DPW&T land bank is located in Henson Creek, Stream Valley Park, and currently has 22.85 acres available. By applying the small conveyance credit, there will still be 22.54 acres available for future DPW projects. DPR staff respectfully request your approval of this request. Are there any questions?
Questions for staff? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
Move approval of land disposal, Oak Crest Community Center.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Did I?
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Sun. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you.
Mr. McNeil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, we'll move on to the next items on our agenda. Under our consent agenda, we have a number of items under 4A and 4D. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to oppose the staff's recommendations on these items under 4A and 4D? And board members, are there anyone who wishes to discuss any of these items? If not, I'd look for a motion.
After consideration of the records for items number 4A and 4D, I move adoption of the staff's finding and approval of these items on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Would I?
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. We will now move on to our regular agenda items. And the first item is item 5. This is a specific design plan, STP 0318-H2, the Preserve of Piscataway, Lot 75, Block V. Angie Bynum is going to give us a staff presentation. We have Edva Sanchez, who is representing the applicant. I don't think that there's a lot of controversy about this issue. I'm not actually sure the applicant has registered to speak, but let's turn to staff and we'll hear what they have to say. Ms. Bynum?
Good morning. The applicant did not register to speak, but they are watching the call.
Okay. So take it away if you want to give us a staff presentation, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Angel Bynum. This is item 5, SDP 0318-82 for the Preserve at Piscataway, Lot 75, Block B, requesting approval of a homeowner's minor amendment to construct a 12 by 12 foot deck at the rear of the existing single-family detached dwelling located within a 25-foot required rear yard setback. This application has been reviewed and evaluated in accordance with the prior zoning ordinance. Based on the findings presented in the technical staff report, staff recommends that the planning board approve this application with one condition. This will conclude staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bynum. Commissioners, any questions for staff? None. Is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this? I don't think we had anyone signed up. No? So the hearing on this is closed. And if there's no discussion on this, commissioners, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve SDP-0318-H2 along with the one condition as outlined in staff's report.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Good eye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye, Mr. Chair.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Bynum.
Thank you.
Next, we have item 6 on our agenda. This is a conceptual site plan CSP-13006-01, 1990 Bright Seat Road property. We have Mr. Burke, who will give the staff presentation, and we have Mr. Hatcher, who is representing the applicant. This is a request for a continuance. I'll turn it over to Mr. Burke real quick. Mr. Burke, we can't hear you. Not yet, Mr. Burke. Sorry, still can't hear you. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you. So maybe unplug and replug.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We
Very
can.
good. All
Take it
set.
away.
All set. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yep. All
No
good.
problem at all.
We're good. Wow. Ryan Crown is on the scene here quickly.
How about that?
Sorry about that. I did test beforehand. I'm not sure what happened there.
No problem at all,
so
Mr. Burke. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Shapiro and members of the Planning Board. My name is Tom Burke. I'm with the Prince George's County Planning Department Urban Design Section. The application before you is listed as item 6 on the agenda. It is a request for a continuance of a conceptual site plan CSP 13006-01 for 1990 Bright Seat Road property. Provided in your backup is a memorandum dated January 26th, 2023, requesting continuance from the February 9th, 2023 to the February 23rd, 2023 Planning Board date to allow the applicant additional time to respond to comments. Staff recommends approval of this continuance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Questions for staff before we turn to the applicant? No questions. Mr. Hatcher, are you on the line?
Chairman, this is James Hunt for the record. Mr. Hatcher was unable to register in time, so but he is watching.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even read my own notes. The attorney did not register to speak. Okay. So is there any question? If there's no questions for staff, this is pretty straightforward, commissioners. If there's no, and there's no one else who signed up to speak, or is there?
Signed up as other.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So we do have a Mr. Slocum who has signed up to speak, and he's not with the applicant's team. Mr. Slocum, are you on the line? Let's take a second here just to make sure. Check our list of folks who've signed up. I don't see Mr. Slocum.
Chair Shapiro, this is Tom Burke for the record. I believe the attorney, Chris Hatcher, did reach out to Mr. Slocum to advise him that this was simply a continuance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. So, commissioners, there's no further discussion on this. Nobody signed up to speak. This is a This is a request for a continuance, and what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
1 sec, before we do that, hold on 1 sec.
I just wanted to just verify with Mr. Berg, is the continuance so that they can work on the master plan issue, or is it for something else?
It's primarily for the master plan trails issue. Yeah.
Okay, good. I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Let's take 1 more second before we make the motion, just to make sure Mr. Slocum is not on the line. We're having staff look through this. Give us 1 sec. Okay, then we're fine. And back to commissioners, what's your pleasure? Is there a motion for this?
move the request for continuance for until February 23rd, 2023.
Second,
Got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Next item on our agenda, item 7, is an extension request for a preliminary plan. This is 4-15007 Baguia Village. We have Mr. Hijazi, who's representing the applicant, and we have Mr. Heath, who will be giving a brief staff presentation. Again, this is a request for a 1-year extension. Mr. Heath, take it away.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chair Shapiro, members of the board. For the record, Antoine Heath with subdivision section. Item 7 is an extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-15007 Baguia Village. The applicant is proposing a 1-year extension until December 31st, 2023. And all information regarding this extension request has been stated in the staff memo, and staff is recommending approval. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. Questions for staff, commissioners? None. I'll turn to Mr. Hijazi, see if you have anything that you would like to add, if you could introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Abdullah Hijazi here for the applicant, AD&C Management. Yes, this is a request for a 1-year extension. Applicant has not requested a 1-year extension prior to this. The applicant purchased the property shortly before the COVID pandemic. Since then, we've been working on finalizing the plat with his consulting, and received comments back on a recreational facilities agreement that was a condition of the plat only this week. We should be able to finalize the plat within the 1-year extension, and would rely on the information that was submitted in our letter justifying the extension request. But I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Questions for Mr. Hijazi? No questions. There's nobody signed up to speak on this issue, on this case before us, commissioners. So I'll close the hearing, and what is your pleasure?
Approval of the request for a 1-year extension, Mr. Chair.
Second,
Thank you. We have a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Hijazi. Thank you, Mr. Heath, though I believe you're on our next case as well. This is item 8, extension request for a preliminary plan 4-16029 Forestville Center, parcel 193. Oh, Mr. Hijazi, you as well are on this one. This is another motion to approve a 1-year. This is a request to approve a 1-year extension. Mr. Heath, you want to take it away?
Yes, good morning again. Antoine Heath for the record with the subdivision section. Item 8 is an extension request for a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-16029 Forestville Center, parcel 193. The applicant is proposing a 1-year extension until December 31st, 2023. And all information regarding this extension request has been stated in the staff memo, and staff is recommending approval. And this will conclude staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Heath? No questions, Mr. Hijazi? Anything you want to add on this?
Just briefly, this is a small shopping center. Our preliminary plan of subdivision was approved in 2019, about a year before the pandemic. And since then, we have been working on a detailed site plan. And as soon as that is approved, we will move forward with the plat. So this is the first request for an extension on the preliminary plan of subdivision, and we would rely on the justification submitted in our written request, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hijazi. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Hijazi?
Yeah,
Mr. Dorner.
just point of order, can you just introduce yourself and your relationship to the application, just for the record?
Sure. I'm here on behalf of NSR Petro LLC, the applicant.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Dorner. Appreciate that. No questions for Mr. Hijazi. We do have one person signed up to speak in opposition. Is Carolyn Bryant. Ms. Bryant, are you on the line? I don't see Ms. Bryant on the line. By any chance, Mr. Hijazi, did you have an opportunity to speak to Carolyn Bryant?
No, this is the first I'm hearing of any opposition, but I'm more than happy to reach out to Ms. Bryant.
Okay, and we don't see Ms. Bryant on the line, so we will move on, close the hearing. And commissioners, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, move approval of the one-year extension for Forestville Center parcel 193.
Second.
We've got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second Commissioner Washington. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Hijazi, and thank you, Mr. Heath.
Thank you.
Now we have item 9 on our agenda. This is another extension request for preliminary plan 4-17027 South Lake. This is formerly Carrington. We have Mr. Horn, Arthur Horn, who is representing the applicant, and Mr. Eddie Diaz-Campbell, who will give the staff presentation. And I will turn it over to Mr. Diaz-Campbell. We can't hear you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now, please?
We can, sir.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I am Eddie Diaz-Campbell with the subdivision section. Item number 9 on the agenda is an extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-17027 South Lake. This preliminary plan of subdivision approves 66 lots and 3 parcels for development of 66 single-family dwelling units. The preliminary plan was approved by the planning board on January 10, 2019, and it was valid through December 31, 2022, due to prior legislative extensions of the plan's validity period. By letter dated December 27, 2022, the applicant requested a 2-year extension of the plan's approval to December 31, 2024. This is the applicant's first extension request. This preliminary plan of subdivision is part of a larger development known as South Lake, the bulk of which is subject to preliminary plan of subdivision 4-04035. 11 acres of the overall site are subject to preliminary plan 4-17027, which is under consideration today. The planning board approved a 2-year extension of the validity period of 4-04035 on January 13, 2022. 4-17027 must receive a separate extension to remain valid, and it must independently meet the criteria for an extension. 4-17027 is approved under the provisions of the prior zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, and therefore extensions of time available under the prior subdivision regulations remain available. The prior subdivision regulations authorize the planning board to grant an extension to the normal expiration of a preliminary plan of subdivision if certain criteria are met. The applicable criteria and their findings are listed in the staff memorandum, and staff found that the criteria were met. The applicable criteria allow the plan to receive a 1-year extension of its validity to December 31, 2023. The applicant contends that additional criteria apply which would allow them a longer 2-year extension. However, staff found that these additional criteria would not apply. The applicable criteria required that for a preliminary plan consisting of less than 100 residentially zoned lots, the validity shall not be extended more than 1 year from the normal expiration of the approved preliminary plan. This preliminary plan consists of only 66 residential lots, and therefore a 1-year extension may be granted. The extension criteria also provide that for a preliminary plan consisting of more than 100 residentially zoned lots, the validity shall not be extended more than 2 years for the normal expiration of the approved preliminary plan. The criteria further provide that a preliminary plan consisting of more than 400 residential lots or dwelling units will have a 6-year validity period, which may be extended by up to 2 years from the expiration of the plan or any extension thereof. The applicant contends that a 2-year extension is possible because the overall South Lake project has more than 400 residential lots. However, the extension criteria do not provide any provisions where a preliminary plan may take into account its relationship with another preliminary plan when determining which criteria apply. Each preliminary plan is individually subject to its own validity period, which is determined at the time of its approval, and is individually subject to the extension criteria of the subdivision regulations. 4-17027 cannot be said to consist of lots that are outside its boundaries, nor is it subject to the same expiration as 4-04035, which was approved years before it. For these reasons, staff does not find any criteria apply which could grant the plan a 2-year extension. In conclusion, subdivision staff recommends approval of a 1-year extension of preliminary plan subdivision 4-17027 South Lake, pursuant to section 24-119D of the prior subdivision regulations. Should a 1-year extension be approved, the plan will be valid until December 31, 2023. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Commissioners, are there questions for Mr. Diaz-Campbell before we turn to Mr. Horn? And let me just say, in my read on this, the regulations are quite clear, and that this preliminary plan must have at least 100 dwelling units, and it does not. So I'm curious to see which direction Mr. Horn goes with this, but do we have questions for staff before we turn to Mr. Horn?
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to actually dovetail on what you just said. I wanted to get the specific number. I think it's 26, but I wanted to verify with Mr. Diaz-Campbell, or if you could verify, Mr. Diaz-Campbell, how many lots.
The preliminary number for what again? Say again.
For the number of lots for this particular case, I think it's 26 plats, or it would be like 26 residentially zoned lots, but I just want to be.
I think we have 66 dwelling units.
Oh, 66. Okay. I was thinking it was 26. I think it said somewhere in the report that it was 26. So, okay, 66. Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Diaz-Campbell? I'm sorry, Ms. Diaz-Campbell, go ahead.
Mr. Doran, there have been 26 plats approved so far for the overall South Lake project.
Okay, there's 66 total that are planned.
We're talking about two different things. There are 26 plats, as in plat applications that have been previously filed for the overall project. There's 66 lots and also 66 dwelling units that are within the boundaries of this preliminary plan subdivision.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions for staff. I will turn to Mr. Horn.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Arthur Horn, with the law offices of Shipley and Horn in Largo, Maryland, here on behalf of South Lake Partners, LLC. Certainly want to start off by thanking Mr. Diaz-Campbell for his very thorough presentation, and also Ms. Sherry Connor, who, upon filing the application, pointed out that because it was a separate preliminary plan, that they would not be recommending 2 years, but 1 year. I do not have, Mr. Chairman, an argument to that fact. The language as stated in the zoning ordinance is clear. This certainly is part of our overall development with over 1,000 units, but it does have a separate preliminary plan. And so we agree with staff's recommendation and believe we have, as they said, met the criteria for the 1 year extension. And I can answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. That was helpful and clear. Any questions for Mr. Horn? No questions. Then commissioners, there's no one who signed up to speak on this, so I will close the hearing. Commissioners, the staff recommendations approval of a 1 year extension. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the request of a 1 year extension South Lake project.
And I second.
So a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo?
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Bourne,
much.
and thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Diaz-Campbell. I believe you're on our next case. This is our final item on the agenda. This is item 10, an extension request for a preliminary plan 4-06116 Greenvale Parkway. We have Dr. Walter Baumann, who's representing the applicant. And we have Mr. Diaz-Campbell again, who's giving the staff presentation. I believe staff's recommendation is to disapprove the one-year extension, but let me turn to Mr. Diaz-Campbell for the staff presentation before we hear from Dr. Baumann.
All right. Good morning once again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, once again, I am Eddie Diaz-Campbell with the subdivision section. Item number 10 on the agenda is an extension request for preliminary plan subdivision 4-06116 Greenvale Parkway. This preliminary plan subdivision approved 8 lots for development of 8 single-family detached dwelling units. The preliminary plan was approved by the planning board on May 3rd, 2007, and it was valid through December 31, 2022, due to prior legislative extensions of the plan's validity period and a one-year extension approved by the planning board on February 10, 2022. By letter dated December 12, 2022, the applicant requested a one-year extension of the plan's approval. This is the second extension request filed for this preliminary plan. 4-06116 was approved under the provisions of the prior zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, and therefore extensions of time available under the prior subdivision regulations remain available. The prior subdivision regulations authorize the planning board to grant an extension to the normal expiration of preliminary plan of subdivision if certain criteria are met. These criteria and their findings are listed in the staff memorandum. Staff found that most of the criteria were not met. The third and fourth criteria require findings that 2 years is not sufficient time to prepare the final plats, and that the applicant is not unduly delaying the filing of the final plats. Staff found that these criteria were not met. At the time of the previous extension request approved on February 10, 2022, the applicant at the time requested extension on the basis that delays on the project were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that approval of a one-year extension would allow time for the applicant to finalize the design of the project and prepare the necessary plans for detailed site plan and final plat submission, regardless of not having a purchaser for the property. However, in the past year, no plans have been submitted towards completing the development approvals. The current applicant has not provided any information as to progress towards making any further detailed site plan submissions, and no such submissions have been received by staff. The applicant has not provided any information supporting that the existing validity period was not sufficient time to prepare the final plats, and they have not provided any information supporting that they are not unduly delaying the filing of the final plats. Due to the lack of any known progress towards preparing a detailed site plan, it appears rather that there has been an undue delay. The fifth criterion requires that for a preliminary plan consisting of less than 100 residentially zoned lots, the validity shall not be exceeded more than 1 year from the normal expiration of the approved preliminary plan. Due to prior legislative extensions, the normal expiration of the subject plan would have occurred on December 31, 2021. The board previously granted a one-year extension which extended the validity to December 31, 2022. A further extension of the validity cannot be granted under this criterion. The seventh criterion provides that a final extension of up to 2 years from the expiration of a previously approved extension may be granted upon the applicant's submission to the planning board of a letter from a permitting agency showing that the issuance of the required permit is delayed due to circumstances beyond the control of the applicant. The applicant did not provide such a letter, and therefore this criterion is not met. Staff would further like to note that we have been in regular contact with the applicant since before their submission of an extension request, and we have explained to them on multiple occasions the material they would need to submit for the application. Nevertheless, the applicant did not provide any material responding to the required criteria. Staff also at no point told the applicant they were guaranteed to be granted an extension request, though they were told they could apply for one. Finally, staff would like to remind the board that for the purposes of plan applications, an applicant as well as their heirs, successors, and assignees are equally responsible for meeting the requirements of all prior approvals received. For this reason, staff typically does not find that business activities related to buying and selling of land constitute progress towards obtaining further necessary plan approvals, such as the detailed site plan and final plat. We therefore do not find that the applicant's recent purchase of the property is sufficient justification for delay in filing applications for these plans. In summary, in order for staff to recommend a second extension of the validity period, The applicant would have had to submit a letter from a permitting agency as provided by criterion 7, but this was not done. In order for staff to recommend an extension of validity period generally, the applicant would have had to demonstrate conformance to criteria 3 and 4, but this was also not done. Therefore, staff recommends disapproval of a 1-year extension of preliminary plan subdivision 4-06116 Greenvale Parkway. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Commissioner, staff is clear that this request is not justified in accordance with the criteria of section 24-119D5A. Are there any questions for staff before we turn to the applicant?
Just a process question, Mr. Chairman. And so the net effect of this is a question. The net effect of this disapproval means that the applicant would actually have to start the application process all over. And I don't know if that's for you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell, or council. Is that the net effect of a disapproval?
Yes, they would need to file a new preliminary plan subdivision in order to develop the site.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for staff? If not, Dr. Bowman, I will turn to you and you can introduce members of your team if it's helpful, as well as introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman Shapiro. Good morning to the esteemed Planning Board of Prince George's County. I'm Dr. Walter Bowman, Senior, owner and developer of T-Boat Residential. With me, I have our civil engineer, Patrick Horgan, who is representing Husker Consulting, who is doing our civil engineer work for this project. And this morning, I come before you as a new developer developing in Prince George's County on this magnitude for the first time. We currently do, single family new build construction as a licensed builder in Prince George's County. And this is our first development project of multi-homes and one giving specific geographic location. The reason I come to you because I had a meeting with Department of Prince George's County Enforcement Regulation and just making sure that I could build duplexes on the lot, even though the lot was approved to build single family homes. I had that meeting late August of last year in 2022 in preparation for acquiring this property or not. And I had an extensive meeting with them, and they indicated that I could not build duplexes on it because this community was not zoned for that. But I could move forward with the purchase of the property and still build the single family residential homes, which after completing my due diligence with my construction team and civil engineer, we decided to move forward with the purchase of this property, excited to build these 8 new residents in Prince George's County in December of 2022, just last month. Upon immediately purchasing the property, acquiring the property, as I was told in that meeting that this property does qualify for one last 1-year extension, which I based my decision to move forward so that we wouldn't have to start that whole application process over. But to my dismay, to my despise, after speaking with Miss, she's the one who's Sherry Connor, Miss Connor. After speaking with Miss Connor, she said that under the rules, even though they told me I had another year extension on this, I wouldn't qualify. So I come humbly before this planning committee and Chairman Shapiro, asking that some exception be made because this is my first time asking for an extension. And immediately upon full ownership and acquisition of this property, I immediately got to work to make sure that all of our civil work was done. Our plat would be resubmitted under new ownership. And if possible, I would also like for the esteemed planning committee to also hear from my civil engineer, Mr. Patrick Horgan, who will also indicate the amount of work that we did hitting the ground running on this project, in which we're requesting this extension not to set us back or delay us any further.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman, Dr. Bowman. And of course, we can hear from any member of your team that you wish. You have the floor. So, Mr. Horgan, you want to take it away if you could introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Patrick Horgan with Husker Consulting, with a civil engineering firm that Dr. Bowman has hired for this project. I guess I'll cover a little bit of the back history on when we were engaged and what work we have done kind of as soon as we were brought on board. forward. So yeah, we were, Dr. Bowman did hire us effectively as soon as he purchased the property. We immediately began work with an updated boundary and topographic survey of the property, which did get completed in, I believe, December. And we have begun work on the site development, the detailed site plan. So while it is true that no additional submissions have been made to the county, we have been effectively working on this project as soon as we were engaged and then as soon as Dr. Bowman purchased the property. So that's a little bit on that. In general, the development, it meets all current, zoning and regulations in the ordinance. There's no special exceptions or waivers that would be needed for this development. It is relatively straightforward. It would mimic the surrounding properties and developments in the area. And so that a new preliminary plan would effectively be resubmitting the same thing. Obviously it would be reviewed in detail and comments might come up, but we would kind of just be redoing work and re-spending time to, get a preliminary plan approved, kind of reapproved. So.
Thank you, Mr. Horgan. I appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Horgan or Dr. Bowman, commissioners?
Let me just ask, we have specific criteria that we're supposed to be following to make our decisions, and your team didn't actually address those criteria before. When you submitted the application, I haven't really heard a whole lot of justification of those specific criteria today. So I'm wondering if you can help kind of talk through that a little bit more, because that's essentially how we have to make the decision. That is how we're bound to it. So let me give you the floor back to kind of address those concerns potentially that were raised by staff.
And let me join with Commissioner Dorner on that before you go, which is Dr. Bowman, I think I can speak for all of us that we're quite sympathetic to your situation, and we certainly encourage you to move forward and to be successful with your projects. But the criteria are crystal clear, and that's what we're bound to. So that's why Commissioner Dorner is asking a really pertinent question, which is, do you have anything that you can bring to us that helps us to understand in any way that you have met the criteria, despite the worthiness of the project? That's actually not the issue that's before us. It's have you or have you not met the criteria to allow us to grant the continuance. So let me put it back on you if there's anything that you want to add to that, Dr. Bowman.
Mr. Horgan, anything you want to say before
Well, there are a number of criteria listed. I think the one that you might want to focus on when you're talking about the history of your involvement in the project is the undue hardships that were kind of brought on you with coming into the property when, it's not the original applicant or developer, and effectively being bounded by limitations on how fast real estate transactions happen, as long as well as, just getting a survey crew out there and everyone working.
And one thing I'd also like to add to that as well, as far as the 2-year to record the plat again, it goes back to my preliminary meeting when I thought I was doing my due diligence and I can, take responsibility for not knowing the requirements that I had to have met. But I thought I started with the right department to make sure that I could get this extension if I move forward with that. And I should have done more due diligence in terms of understanding the specific requirements. But nevertheless, sometimes you're at the mercy of practicality. Did I, blatantly just disregard the requirements? No, absolutely not. Once, I took possession of the property and they told me I had until December 31st to file for the extension, I thought it was just as crystal clear as that. I could file for the extension stating I'm the new owner. We'll get the 1-year extension that I'm requesting for the first time, and we'll be able to move forward with the property. And it was only until Ms. Connor pretty much advised me that these are very specific requirements, I would have to go plead my case before this esteemed committee. And, hopefully that there's some leniency there to allow us this 1-year extension. We wouldn't have to start from scratch, creating a financial hardship, because we'll be submitting the same work for the same project with the same requirements, and also costing us a delay in time in moving this project forward.
Yeah, and Dr. Bowman, when did you purchase the property exactly?
December 8th, 2022, less than less than 2 months ago.
Correct. And one of the requirements, from the pre-preliminary plan to the final recorded plat is to do a detailed site plan submission and approval. So effectively, if you bought the property that time, if we are engaged a month before, a little before that, it would be impossible. I mean, we could potentially get a detailed site plan completed and submitted, but to get it reviewed and approved would be an absolute impossibility with that time frame.
Understood. I appreciate that.
Just for clarity's sake, can you just mention how many lots you're trying, because that also wasn't in the submission initially. So can you mention how many lots you'd be trying to develop in conformance?
Yes, sir. It is a total of 8 lots for 8 new build single-family homes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Horgan or Dr. Bowman? There's no one who signed up to speak on this matter, so I'm going to close the public hearing on this. And under deliberation, commissioners, I'm very, very sympathetic to the situation that Dr. Bowman is in, but I think the regulations are crystal clear. And while it pains me to say, I do not think that this is appropriate to counter the staff's recommendation on this and approve the 1-year extension. I think that, it's just flat out clearly not justified. I don't think Dr. Bowman had any even close to ill intent around this. It's just not the issue. It's more that the regulations are crystal clear. So under deliberation discussion, any thoughts, reactions from you, commissioners?
I would like to hear from our council and see what their opinion is in terms of what our options are, if any.
Sure.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Giraldo. David Warner, Principal Counsel. Unfortunately, the law as written doesn't give you much discretion because the section that Eddie pointed to, 24-119 D5A Romanet 5, already says you can't grant more than a 1-year extension. And you've already granted a 1-year extension for this preliminary plan. And the change in ownership doesn't change that. The extension is granted to the plan no matter who owns the property. So you're prevented from that provision alone from taking any action to extend this by a plain reading of the law. There is the separate section 24-119 D5A7 that could give you some discretion if there had been submitted any kind of letter from a permitting agency that suggested that, some permit is being held up of some kind, but there's no such evidence in the record.
So the only way an extension could have been granted, if there was a letter from, let's say, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, WSSC, or what have you, that essentially said they can't move forward because of a delay by that respective agency.
Right, that agency is preventing them, for example, from filing their final plat because they're sitting around waiting for a permit.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, other questions, comments? Commissioner Washington, you had something? I wasn't sure if you wanted to say something as well.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, it was going to be a bit redundant in that I certainly empathize with the applicant situation. But it's pretty clear the parameters we have, I guess, and in this case, importantly, don't have with regards to what we have to base our decision on. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Bailey, anything to add?
No, I was just thinking the same thing. It kind of pains me, but to have to take the particular action that I know I will have to take. But according to our regulations, I don't have much of a choice.
Thank you. If there's no further deliberation discussion on this, then commissioners, I would look for a motion.
Can I just ask a quick question I know we closed the hearing itself, but I think what Mr. Warner said was helpful. I just wanted to find out from the applicant if they think they can get such a letter, because we didn't ask them that before. They did talk about DPI having met with them, and DPI would be one of those agencies that they could potentially get a letter from. I don't know though if they would be able to get a letter stating that something like the issuance of the permit has been delayed. Has there been any kind of delay that they're aware of? Because that might be the one thing that we could catch up on. but I just haven't heard anything about that.
Thank you very much for that, because I was a bit perplexed to hear the council state that we wouldn't be able to get another year extension when DPI at that last meeting in August told us that we were eligible for one more year extension. We just had to file it by the end of December 31st. So, you know, I also bought the property predicated upon what that entity told me, right? So if I'm able to at least get some more time before your next hearing, I can go back to Melinda Boland, who was a part of that meeting. She's the director over there, and hopes that, you know, she would be willing to write a letter, being that they told me I would have one more one-year extension, and that may not be exactly what the case is, but I was clearly told that in that meeting.
I think, thank you for that, Dr. Bowman. I think, Commissioner Dorner, I think the distinction here, though, is, and I imagine we're in the same place around this, but it's not that Dr. Bowman could get a letter from Director Bowling saying that she said it would be okay. The issue would be if, for whatever reason, DPI was holding up the process, essentially if they were the cause for the delay.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine how that could be the case.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about, Mr. Bowman, if there was some sort of a delay in the permit itself, not just them saying that like you have another year, but if there's any permits that have been delayed on your application by DPI, because I wasn't sure if that is the case.
I mean, Dr. Bowman, to be clear, I mean, you haven't asked them to do anything, so how could they be responsible for a delay?
No, and they wouldn't be responsible for a delay to correct the record. However, because again, like I said, you know, I had this project for 2 months, but if this committee would allow me or afford me the opportunity to go back and do some more due diligence in reference to that, to contact all of these agencies and also contact the prior owner to make sure that's not the case, because again, they were working on this since 2007 and got all of these multiple extensions. I may be able to find something where that will save me time between now and I think your next hearing is the 23rd, if I'm afforded that opportunity to continue this until the 23rd.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman. And we're a bit out of order too, because we have closed the hearing and we're under deliberation. But I was happy to extend the opportunity for you to have your voice heard again on this. But commissioners, this is back to us. As sympathetic as I am to Dr. Bowman, I think what's before us is quite clear. And so I'm happy to hear if there's any further discussion on this.
So I would actually be fine with allowing the continuance. I don't think it hurts anything. To me, it sounds reasonable. It's unfortunate he doesn't have legal representation to help him through the transaction a little bit more. But if he were to come back and have some sort of a permit that he just wasn't aware of, that had been delayed beyond his control, I think that might end up meeting the criteria. But I wouldn't want to spend too much time waiting on this, because then we're just delaying his own ability to kind of move forward, and we're not doing him a service in that. But I think just given the nature of not being familiar with the process, it seems reasonable for us to just allow him to come back whenever we want to set the date for that.
I would just add, Mr. Chairman, and certainly appreciating my colleagues' comments and sentiments. You know, in the staff's report, in addition to staff's testimony this morning, and Mr. Diaz-Campbell can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but my takeaway from that information was that there had been ample opportunity, not only ample opportunity to provide that information, but in fact, staff had requested it on multiple occasions, and there was still no response from the applicant to provide the information that's needed. Typically, when we see these type cases, my heart goes out to you, Dr. Bowman, because I fully appreciate and recognize you're new to the process. But for us, it puts us in a position where, even though we're empathetic to your situation, we'd be establishing a really dangerous precedent that I personally am not inclined to do by making a decision based on emotions as opposed to, quite frankly, the law and what we have to be guided by. So the latter part of that was just add on. My only other point was, it's clear to me in the record that there have been multiple times where this information had been requested and it just not been provided. So that's it.
Right, and I appreciate that, and I share those sentiments with Commissioner Washington. And I, again, as sympathetic as I am to Dr. Bowman, colleagues, I think the law is clear on this. And I actually think that allowing some measure of extension is just postponing the inevitable. I don't even think that's fair to the applicant, because we know which direction this is going. There are very specific criteria that have not been met. They're not going to be met in a week. They're just not. So any further discussion on this?
So I don't necessarily disagree with the comments that you all are saying, but my understanding, and Mr. Diaz-Campbell can correct me if I was hearing wrong or reading wrong, my understanding is that, yeah, that the applicant had ample opportunities and legislative extensions, but it wasn't the current applicant, it was the prior owner. Or Mr. Diaz-Campbell, have you actually asked the prior owner to try and provide the permits or the different sort of exceptions? That's where I wasn't clear. I thought that was like the prior owner, and that the current owner had just recently bought the property, hadn't necessarily had those opportunities.
That's correct, and that's why I was a bit perplexed. Again.
Wait, Dr. Bowman.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, the question was directed to Mr. Diaz-Campbell.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman.
Yes, Commissioner Dorner. So I was referring to communications that we have had with Dr. Bowman since he bought the property. We did reach out to Dr. Bowman and tell him what specific material would be needed in order for staff to evaluate the extension, including the letter from a permitting agency. But despite our request for that information, he did not provide it.
Okay. Thank you. We're still under deliberation. Any further comments, questions amongst us? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt staff's recommendation and disapprove disapprove the request for a one-year extension for preliminary plan 4-06116.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Is there discussion on the motion?
So I'll just add to discussion that I think it's unfortunate if it is the case that, and it sounds like it is, that Mr. Diaz-Campbell had reached out to the applicant and didn't get that information. Because if his answer had said, no, it was actually the prior owner, and we haven't had that kind of discussion back and forth with the current owner, I would have been fine with extending this out a little bit more just to kind of allow that to happen. And I think that would be consistent with things that we've done in the past. But because he did say it was the current owner, an applicant, I don't think we can necessarily allow it to move forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion?
No, except that I would like to associate myself with my commissioner's comments, because I thought it was the explanations had occurred with the prior owner and not with this current owner.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion?
No, I share in the comments and the empathy. I understand, and it's unfortunate, but which is why I asked our counsel. It seems as if our hands are tied on this. So that's about all I have to add.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. So this is to disapprove the one-year extension. Dr. Bowman, good luck to you in the future.
For your time.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, anything else that anyone has before us? Mr. Hunt, any further business to come before the planning board today?
Mr. Chairman, there are no additional items before the planning board today.
Okay. Then, without objection, we are adjourned at 11:05.
Thank you.
Love you, Mr. Hunt.
Everyone have a good day.
You too. Thank you.